The experts disagree on many things about Rocky Marciano, but one thing which they all seem to agree on is this: he was the best conditioned heavyweight champion of all time. Boxing is a grueling sport, and in order to make it to the later rounds, a fighter must be in shape. A fighter is in his peak condition for the night when the first bell rings. 3 minutes later, he gets his first rest. Then it's an alternating cycle of 3 minutes of exertion, followed by that precious 60 seconds to try and recover. With every round, more energy is spent and less is recovered, until a fighter is pushed to the very limit. Many lack the stamina to make the long fight, especially heavyweights. Marciano learned early on that he had shortcomings to overcome. His short reach, his height, and his lack of natural boxing ability put him at a disadvantage. But he had strength and courage, and with a ferocious amount of hard training, he added stamina. Rocky was disqualified in his first amateur fight with Henry Lester when he became totally exhausted and used a knee to keep Lester off him. He was smoking heavily at the time, eating all the wrong foods, and hadn't trained at all. The crowd booed him, and even his younger brother Sonny was disappointed in him. He told Sonny, "I learned something from this fight. If I ever get into this ring again, you can bet I won't be out of condition." It was a promise he kept through 49 pro fights. Rocky Marciano's roadwork routine was absolutely grueling. He would run 5 to 6 miles every morning, even when he didn't have a fight. He did this for 6 years straight, every single day. Marciano was one of the first fighters to truly weaponize pace. As the old saying goes, fatigue makes a coward of us all, and Rocky never wanted to be more fatigued than his opponents. Marciano spent hours punching a special heavy bag that was made specifically for him. It weighed 300 pounds, much heavier than a normal heavy bag, and he had to hit it even harder to move it around. He wanted to be able to move 200 plus pound heavyweights around with his body punches. Rocky would normally run at least 5 to 6 miles a day year round. But when a fight was signed, he'd increase the distance to 9 to 10 miles, and usually up it to 12 to 15 miles in the final week. On top of this, he liked to walk another 5 to 10 miles in the late afternoon or evening, and he did this all in the hilly countryside where he trained. It was Rocky's obsession with conditioning that kept him training 365 days a year, and this dedication gave him stamina never before seen in a fighter. It allowed him to sit a blistering pace that no other fighter could match. A good heavyweight throws on an average 40 to 45 punches a round during active rounds, and about half of that when tired. Marciano averaged in the 80 to 85 punch range, and it wasn't unusual for him to throw over 100 punches a round. It's an axiom in boxing that a sluggard tires quicker than a boxer. Marciano is the glaring exception to that rule. He could outlast the best conditioned pure boxers. The big sluggers who might have been able to hurt him lost their power after a few rounds. The better conditioned boxers didn't have the power to hurt him. Witness his wins over excellent boxers like Roland Lastarza and Ezer Charles. Though both stayed with Marciano for the duration of their first fights with him, they lost because Rocky's attacks never faltered. You might outbox him, but you could never outpunch him. Marciano liked to run up a hill near his home while training. He'd charge up it at full speed, then run backwards back to the bottom. Then he'd charge up again. Rocky did this over and over to build up his leg muscles and his stamina. Football great Walter Payton did the same thing on a hill near his home. It allowed Payton to drive with his legs and hit as hard as men who outweighed him by over 60 pounds. Marciano derived the power to hurt much bigger men the same way. Something else Marciano did to build up his stamina and punching power was to get in a swimming pool to shoulder depth and throw hundreds of punches underwater. Despite the critics who claimed he was too slow, clumsy, a brawler unskilled in the finer points of his craft, Marciano's sheer stamina and an overwhelming desire to win more than compensated for any shortcomings in his boxing style. Marciano's preoccupation with physical conditioning cannot be overstated. He was eager to train every day before a fight, and unlike most heavyweights, he sometimes went to camp months before there was even a fight scheduled for him. Even Joe Frazier, the former champion who also prided himself on being fit, did not train with anywhere near the same dedication of Marciano. Marciano was willing to seclude himself from the world, including from his wife and family, for as long as 3 months before a fight. Apart from the grueling physical ordeal of this period and the obsessive preoccupation with diet, weight, and muscle tone, Marciano concentrated on one thing: the upcoming fight. Every minute of his life was defined in terms of the opening second of the fight. In his training camp, the opponent's name was never mentioned, nor was boxing as a subject discussed. In the final month, Marciano would not write a letter, since a letter related to the outside world. During the last 10 days before a fight, he would see no mail, take no phone calls. During the week before the fight, he would not shake hands or go for a ride in a car, however brief. No new foods, no dreaming of the morning after the fight, for all that was not the fight had to be excluded from his consciousness. When Marciano worked out with a punching bag, he saw his opponents before him. When he jogged, he saw his opponent close beside him. No doubt when he slept, he saw his opponent constantly. Madness or merely discipline? In any case, for the great Rocky Marciano, it worked.